thoughts. Let's say you have a trauma, like a thought that keeps replaying in your head and it's painful and you just can't stop it. We all have our traumas. So I had a trauma. And the practice that I did was, while I'm in meditation on a retreat, I made an intention I was going to do something about this trauma. And the practice is, when those obsessive, painful thoughts came up, I would.
And welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I'm your humble servant and seafood Taoist Master Sun Ching. And every day is Christmas for me. I come down to the tree and the universe has graced me with this incredible being, another expression of consciousness. And I would love to welcome to the podcast today, Jeanne Mayell, the intuitive. How are you, my dear friend?
I'm fine, and thank you for welcoming me.
Well, yes, it's definitely, I'm very grateful that you're here today. And I always welcome conversation with amazing beings like yourself. And today is a perfect day for that. And so what I'd like to do is start with a little bit about you just sharing your, abbreviated journey to this very moment.
Oh, you want me to tell you about myself?
Yeah, a little bit, just to give people an understanding.
Yeah. So I grew up in the Northeast and I live there still. And I've always been a very creative, intuitive person, but I didn't know that. I just thought that was reality. And I went on a very traditional path in terms of education, and my first job, my first big job, and my second job. And I found that I just knew things. I worked in public arena, worked for the governor of Massachusetts for a while, and then the mayor of New York City. And I always kind of felt my way through and had strong feelings about the way things should be and about what the public felt. What does the collective feel? What do they want? What's right? And eventually broke out on my own and decided I wanted to work with people individually. And I went a traditional route. I got a master's in public health from a university and a master's in education. But again, I always ended out in the intuitive realm. And then around 1985, I went to see a psychic who was quite a very amazing and beautiful person, also very traditional originally. And it opened my eyes to a whole other knowing, a whole other awareness that I've always had, but I didn't know what that was. I just thought it was knowing, I thought it was just reality. And so I started honing that ability. And I loved the tarot, the beautiful art of the cards, and found that the images, when you look at a picture, it stimulates the part of the brain that is intuitive and creative, and became friends with it. And I kept working regularly for a while. I worked as a writer. I wrote an article for The Atlantic and New York Magazine and East West Journal. I wrote for them regularly. But more and more, I leaned more towards one-on-one readings. Then I started teaching it. And I had classes, and I had like a therapy group of people who would come, and I would teach them how to read cards, and we would help each other and support each other. And sometime around 2010 or so, I opened up a website and started putting visions of the future, because I was so concerned about the earth and what was happening to our earth. I'm a Taurus. I love nature. And that went viral, basically, those predictions, those visions. And so but I just kept doing what I've always been doing. I teach online now. Everything's online. And I speak to people all over the world and help them with navigating their path through this world. And I have a beautiful team now of people who like-minded, intuitive people. And that's it. I don't put myself out as any special gift. I think everyone is endowed with intuition and with the ability to read and sense energy. We need science too. It's a good kind of background. It's a good kind of data set, but real discovery, real truth, it's in the present moment, and it happens in our body. And if we train and hone ourselves, we can be more awake, more aware. And it keeps my whole path keeps evolving. Like and that's what's fun about it, right? Because you work with energy too, and it's a great mystery. It's never fully understood. We have to stay very humble, because if we don't, we will get a pie in the face from the universe. we always have to have that unknowing, that mystery with us, and respect it. And I think where I am now is trying very much to evolve, to become more loving, more open to love, more accepting of all people. Not easy, especially when you see what goes on in the world. But I find that the website that I have has a community now because of the forum. There's like 70,000 posts in this thing, and an active group of people who are trying to navigate this troubled world, and trying to do it by seeing what's good and having a sense of love and helping each other. And so what does it all come down to? Love, right? In the end?
Yeah, I think that's truly the center of all things. It's just how someone finds that level of awareness through your teaching, my teaching, a epiphany of a realization. But I think it starts there, and when you become more aware of that, then you can basically grow your version of love into a universal one that's not subject to the limitations of your perception of reality, because that's kind of like where people get a little skewed. They get skewed, and they wonder why things are not sort of like synchronizing for them, or they're not feeling, whole, because they have a version, and that's not the wrong version. It's just subject to other things that have taken place in their reality, leading them up to that point. And then by having a profound conscious awakening, by coming across your material or my material or whatever, they just change. They go, wow, there's so much more out there. There's so much more to discover about myself, and how I can be really, truly this, I am part of this universal tapestry that is all things. And then we start to really feel what it's like to be right here. And I feel like a lot of people have been subject to the limitations of, societal norms, and the way that they've really been sort of controlled by their environment. They don't realize they have been. And so that sort of transmutes into all these other things. So when you speak of your whatever's compelling you, that intuitively you want the best for humanity, for the world, for all things, is truly, in my opinion, tapping into this selflessness that we all have access to. It just depends on how far removed we are. And most of the time, I believe it's like a 6th degree of separation. And we just come back around if we're just given the opportunity.
Yeah, I think we think similarly. It is the opposite of love is fear. It's not hate. Hate is just, I learned when I started doing retreats and learned Buddhism by kind of osmosis when you go on meditation retreats, and the word for hate is aversion, pushing away. And when I learned that, I realized that hate is fear. It's just pushing away something you're afraid of. And so the opposite of love is fear, which doesn't mean that we can live fearlessly. We are animals, just like the animals out there. And they, if you watch a squirrel on the ground, they're enjoying whatever they're eating, but they're looking around constantly to make sure they're safe. And I think that's a natural default in the human psyche, is fear. It's just that we have too much fear. And when you have too much fear, you can't thrive, and you can't be healthy, and you miss a lot. You miss opportunity, you miss people. The other thing that I'm very aware of, because of working with intuition, is that we are literally all one. We are all one. It isn't just a nice thing to say. It's not just a spiritual or religious thing to say. It is physics. We are all one. And if we are all one, which I believe we are, and that separation between us is this extremely counterintuitive thing that we've been taught, but it isn't accurate, then whatever's happening to other people is in some ways happening to us. It's if we're all part of one great big body. It's not as if I think we are. Now, all this is counterintuitive, really. It's it just our brains can't really wrap around it, but it's true. I know it's true that we're all one. And so where does that leave us? Like, how do I navigate the world and take care of myself at the same time and make sure I'm safe, and also that I'm not, that codependency is where you want to love everybody, but you can't carry everybody on your back. And we all have a responsibility to take care of ourselves. And so one of the things that I've gotten interested in is intuition, not like fortune telling intuition, which I know that stuff. I can teach that, how to read this thing and that thing and all the little tricks of the trade. But there's the everyday intuition. Like, how do you know when you're in a relationship with somebody that is unhealthy? You want to help them, right? Let's say you're a helper personality and you want to help them, and you believe in love and you believe we're all one. So how do you know when that isn't serving you or the other person? And so that's the whole issue of codependency is something we feel in our bodies. We feel it. Like if we are taking care of somebody who really needs to be going out and taking care of themselves and doing the hard work, right? Then we'll feel that too. And that's part of our intuition, versus when we are helping others and it feels really good. It just feels like yes in your body. It's not because they're giving back. It isn't because you're getting something physical back from it. It's because of your heart. And the more you pay attention to how your heart feels, it will guide you. That's my feeling. It will guide you. And that's a process. In fact, meditation helps with that process, being aware of yourself. So that's one of the intuitive teachings that keep coming to me that I want to help other people with. And it's subtle, not easy.
Well, you referred to Buddhism as something that you were exposed through
Yes.
in your journey. Do you implement any sort of Buddhist sort of like philosophies, guidance, techniques, methods, or was it just something that you were exploring through your journey?
Actually, I think meditative practices are what I learned. I went to Insight Meditation Society, which is in Western Massachusetts, and they're very easygoing. They're not strict. And so, like, they don't tell you what to do or how to meditate. They just want you to show up and sit on the pillow and then, and do whatever you need to do. And then I did a Vipassana for a while, which is there's a place called Vipassana Center, very famous because there are others all over the world. And I did them for a while. They're a little too strict for me, but what they taught, and I went for several weeks, what they teach is focusing on the body, everything that's going on in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes you out of your head, out of the ticker tape mind. And the other thing I learned was that thoughts, like when we leave ourselves, we're not with ourselves. We're up in our heads. We're taught that to be in our heads, especially out east. Maybe not as much in where you are in the West, but certainly here in the East, it's about knowledge. It's about information. It's about data. And you can spend hours being out of yourself, out of your body. And so what I learned was it's standard. They'll say that thoughts come by like clouds. They float along and they come along like clouds, right? And let them go. Let them come and go. Don't go with them. Stay on your cushion or stay in your body. Focus on your breathing or on all the many sensations you can go through your body from head to toe. There's a trillion sensations, breathing, all your senses, the five senses. And as you do that work, that practice, and you're training yourself to focus on being in your body. And that, for me, has been really important. And I would definitely say I got that from those practices, from the Buddhist practices. Being here now. And beginning to notice when you're not in your body. Like you'll be sitting there meditating and you're thinking about your list, your to-do list, or what somebody said last week, or what somebody, you've left your center. And to be intuitive is very closely related to this, because there are people who claim to be intuitive, but it's just opinion. A lot of it is opinion. It's what they read somewhere. And then there are very talented and intuitive people who don't practice meditation, but I'm not really focusing on them or what they're doing. I'm just saying that I've learned to be here now, to see how I feel, keep checking with myself. I think the body is a great guidance system. And there are many other parts to it than that, but I definitely learned that from these Buddhist practices.
Yeah, these ancient sort of Eastern principles of being still or being present, they're very powerful. We use a lot of different techniques within Taoism, and being the present moment is all things when you truly access that, right? And so, from our perspective, it's first person, third person, no person. When you are no place, person, or thing, you can access an energy, vibration, frequency, and then ultimately, if you can hold the line of that frequency, you can resonate and then create whatever it is that you choose to. And of course, that's where we definitely are like-minded with this emotional content. It can be a gift, or it can be your worst enemy. It really depends on how you perceive it. Sort of like glass half empty, half full. And then that in of itself is palpable. We sort of tend to master the emotional state and that doesn't become too much of a hurdle. It's more realizing what that is, so we don't invest so much time into whether mummy gave us 5 cookies and a glass of milk when we were 5. That is energy. And so when you look at it from a Taoist perspective, there's a soul retrieval process, but in essence, if it's like one of my favorite TV personalities, Judge Judy, would say, "Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining, sir." And so that realization that at a certain point you have to be accountable for your behavior, and this is how you awaken to this state of awareness that is this present moment, is sort of like feeding back into the emotional state without the guidance of, say, yourself or myself, having a greater understanding of what that really is. Or do I repeat the same Groundhog Day processes that this event evokes this, and it's not me, it's them, it's the place, person, and thing, and I'm a good person, and that's normally a red flag for anyone to understand that perhaps maybe looking inside yourself is a good starting point, but it's not an attack on anyone's personality. It's just realizing that these are the very things that on your journey of consciousness, awakening, intuitive potential, that these are definitely catalysts to be problematic if not looked at in a way that it's a healing moment. And that just sort of like gets intertwined into however you are on that journey. But I never look at it as if the emotional content is going to have a negative effect. It's sort of like glass half empty or full. It's how you perceive it, and you can change that instantaneously. It's up to you. And I think that empowerment, that when people come across people like yourself or myself, and they realize I'm remembering who I am, wow, and that selflessness that Jeanne was talking about is like really that default, and it doesn't really come with an intention or a motivation. It just is. That's when you know you're there. When I have someone come to me and goes, oh, Shifu, I have this person who's in need of my help, and I'm like, okay, and they need to go back to their country, their family's sick, and I can give them the resources for it, but I don't know. I'm like, of course you do. You're just thinking about how you can manipulate them if you give them the money they need to go home. So if you have to ask yourself whether you're going to help this person or not, or you need my guidance, then the answer will be no, because the intention is there that you are looking for a reward for what should be really selfless.
Right. Right.
Right.
Especially if you know that we're all one and you help someone, you're rewarded. You feel it. If you don't feel it, then that's worth looking at. Why don't I feel it? Well, tell me, I am curious for you to tell me a little bit about, I felt like I was hearing that you don't have that you somehow almost like don't have emotions, but I'm sure that's not right. You have emotions.
No, emotions are part of the default setting of a human.
Right.
And then when you understand that, you are greater than that, consciousness goes beyond the humanness that you perceive as the reflection in the mirror, as the flesh and blood before you. This is just an anchor to this very realm. But there's a stepping stone to get to that point of realization. But that's one of the first things that I like to teach people, especially within Taoism, is your emotions don't control you, you control your emotions. And people are like, that sounds really testosterone driven. But in reality, you don't want to keep being distorted, which one of my dear friends is a Buddhist monk. He calls it the dukkha. He looks, and his life is observing the distortion. And that really comes from, your perception of reality, how you have entered into this, your life journey, that some of your life experiences is how you perceive reality. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're acquiring the journey to embody this oneness that we speak of, there is a universal love that Jeanne and I are speaking about that is not subject to your perception. And to feel that.
Example of how you yourself have had a emotional upset, let's say,
Hmm.
and how you navigate it without denying it. Like,
Hmm.
how do you experience it and then shift it?
Right.
Yeah.
So, not normally, I always start with the foundational understanding that, you know, everything is energy, frequency, vibration. We start with that first and foremost.
Right.
When I teach people, it's normally over a 9-week period. The energy flow, the essence of all things, starts with the energetics. And the flesh and blood is sort of like a byproduct of how you store your emotional state from a Taoist perspective, from a traditional Chinese medicine perspective, which really has the roots within Taoism. The realization that your emotions are stored within the human body,
Mm-hmm.
and when you evoke them, what you want to do is create homeostasis within the energy centers, within the organs. And by doing that, when you release the emotional state, you reveal the virtue. And so this is sort of like a processes, which is it's just energy.
So
So
you release the emotional state by doing qigong, like.
well, yeah, I have a specific system where I teach people using a visual audible experience, creating a kinesthetic response that evokes a brainwave. So people generally they step past the brainwave. They don't realize that once you operate in a gamma brainwave and you train yourself, you entrain your nervous system to be able to do this. And, I get people that have like they do it once and they go, holy moly, I was feeling really anxious. I was standing at the line at the supermarket, and I literally used the exercise to call in this state, and it completely leveled out the emotion, and I started to realize who I really am. So the
Wow.
emotion, yeah,
Can
yeah,
I want to tell you this process that I learned and see, it doesn't sound like what you're doing, but
right.
I haven't learned qigong, although there has been a little bird on my shoulder telling me for the last 10 years, you need to learn qigong. You should learn qigong. But the process I learned, and at this point, I don't know where I learned it. I thought I learned it from Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist monk. But I don't know where I learned it. Anyway, and it works. What it is let's say you have a trauma, like a thought that keeps replaying in your head, and it's painful and you just can't stop it. We all have our traumas. So I had a trauma. And the practice that I did was, while I'm in meditation on a retreat, I made an intention I was going to do something about this trauma. And the practice is, when those obsessive, painful thoughts came up, they would come, I could start to see them like clouds coming towards me in my mind. And when it got to me, I let the trauma in, because what I've come to realize after trying this, and it worked, was that a lot of the time when you have a bad thought, something happened to you, and you're trying to stop it, you don't want that thought. And all that energy of stopping it is built up in keeping it, perpetuating it, keeping it going, because you never integrate it ever. So the idea was that you let this bad thought, let's say, I'm going to make up a trauma. Let's say I was hit by a car when I was 10 years old. That did not happen, but let's just say that is it. Crossing the street, hit by a car, badly injured. And for years, I'd have flashbacks and like typical trauma, PTSD. And so in meditation, I let myself relive that moment when I started to cross the street and turned, and there was the car, boom, and I let it into my being. I made myself, and I realized when I had that moment that in meditation, how difficult it is when you have a trauma to let it in But all that years and years, I was like 45 years old when I went into meditation. Trauma happens like when I'm 9 or 10, but I was stopping it, preventing it. So I took a deep breath and I let it in. And then I just kept meditating. And it would only hurt for like a second. And then my psyche processed it. And I never had it again. It was gone. I used to have nightmares, and the nightmares went away too, which is a real test that you've definitely dealt with a trauma because it's very difficult to control your dreams. Is that anywhere near what you're talking about? Because I loved that technique and it really worked.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when through this process that I teach people, it calibrates the energy centers. So you become synchronized. So whatever is generally embedded within the neuroplasticity of your brain or your heart, where basically most of the trauma lies, we're not just focusing on one or the other. Both are being released. And then even deeper is the Taoist understanding of how it's embedded into the vital organs of your body. And so normally, I just had a student the other day, it was like, I can't believe this like, because the really important thing is to realize, if you're John Smith, the janitor at McDonald's, or you're the Dalai Lama, this material has a profound effect on you as long as you have 5 senses and you're a human being. I haven't run this through an alien sort of like setting. I have no idea what it would do to an alien, but as a human being, it has a very profound effect where the first encounter with this material, you feel like you've had 5 pina coladas, a full body massage, and 10 days in the Bahamas. And people are perplexed with the ability to access this state where you are just embodied with just complete relaxation. And furthermore, it's about applying this. It's not like a journey of like getting a situation where you discover a meditation that puts you in a relaxed state, or you listen to someone giving you bedtime stories or whatever it is, and then you go and apply it to what we call real world battle tested scenarios where you are in your now, you're in your reality. You've gone and you've mastered this skill. You spent 20 minutes of your day getting into this state, and then you walk outside and your neighbor's screaming at you going, your dog's pooping on my lawn. And then of course, immediately you're evoking this emotional state and you're like, well, why did I waste my time with that? Well, what the technique I show people is the second that comes in, you evoke a state, a homeostasis, and dissolve the emotion. The emotion doesn't come back in the same form and it starts to dissipate. And what happens is you will find that you will still retain everything's a thought, feeling, and emotion, or emotion and feeling. There's 3 subsections. Most people might go, hey, emotions and feelings are the same. No, when you look closer, there's quite a difference between the two. But in essence, the emotion and the feeling are null and void. The thought, the experience is there for your wisdom, but it doesn't have the energetic charge.
It did, if we're talking a similar thing, I didn't invoke anything consciously. All I did was stop pushing it away.
Sure.
And stop talking about it. Talking about it was a waste of time. All that talk therapy didn't do any good. All that talk therapy that I did only helped me to feel at least that somebody heard me. That's always nice. It's very nice. But what really worked was the bravery or the conscious effort to feel this, relive it consciously. And then it went in and poof, this psyche processed it because I was in a safe place.
Right.
I had another experience where I had a guilt trauma and really bad guilt trauma. Somebody died who was close to me and I wasn't able to save them. And so for at least 10, I'm trying to think, 20 years, I lived with this guilt trauma. And so how I fixed that was very similar. I started like typing, journaling it and reliving it. It was a different thing. It was way before I started doing meditation and learning that technique I mentioned, but it came down to the same thing. And I relived the experience of when this person died and how I had talked to them and I tried to help them and it didn't work and all of it. And every minute going up to it and afterwards, I'm typing it as if I'm living it. It's like lying on an analyst couch, I guess, but I've never done that. I don't think I could do that with an analyst. I think I'd make up something. I wouldn't be in my full body. I was alone with the computer and I'm doing this. I'm reliving it. And got the very strong feeling that the girl that I was when the trauma happened was being accompanied by the hand with the woman that I had become. Safe, and I was in a safe place. So I was helping her, that inner person, because that's who had the trauma. It was a person inside of me. And I had had nightmares for months about this, and they kept coming. This old guilt thing where I didn't save somebody. And I did this, and I relived it. And then the nightmare stopped. And I thought, I did that. How did I do that? I relived it energetically, like you talk about the energy. I relived the feeling and my psyche processed it. And the rest of the time you're talking to avoid it. In therapy, you talk to avoid it. You do everything you can not to feel it. I even cried, in therapy. This was years ago, but it still didn't process it the way it did in the very brave and intentional moment in which I let it in.
Yeah.
They're two different systems, but they came down to the same thing. And you're describing very technical terms that are part of your teachings and and I don't fully understand them. I hear what you're saying, but I'm also saying that I didn't understand all those terms, but I trusted that my body would energetically transform this. It would process it, is what it did. And it was like poof.
Well, I think we're on the same page because I always tell people if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling. And that's why this system works so effectively for John Smith, the janitor, who has no spiritual inkling or idea that they're on a path of anything, but they want to get a handle of their reality and be able to access it. And what happens when you resonate with this energy and you dial in the synchronicity of the energetic body? What happens is you create a brainwave, and that brainwave, when you're in gamma, it's a full enveloped consciousness. That means you can go and access alpha, theta, delta, epsilon at the same time.
So that's what I was doing in meditation, and that was what I was doing while I was.
It bears the fruit. Well, it bears the fruit of healing too. So, I've measured my own brainwaves, whether I'm channeling spirits or energies or physical healing. And when you're doing mediumship or what you would call psychic stuff, the brain tends to get very inactive. Whereas when you're doing things that are highly, what you would call highly conscious, meaning you have full access, the brainwaves go really high. And then there's a physicality that takes place when you're witnessing a physical healing, which I love to do, where you watch things transform before your very eyes, then all of a sudden it's different.
So you keep saying things that trigger other thoughts. You're talking about, thinking versus experiencing, right? And so I have this thing that I started doing years ago called Read the Future, and it's a timeline. And I learned to do this from this very first man I went to see years ago, who's since died. But all you do is meditate on the world, or on the US, or on whatever, Ukraine, or whatever issue you want to meditate on, or a person, an individual. And you meditate and you count time forward. We call it Read the Future. My students and my colleagues call it RTF, Read the Future. And people who've never been able to see what's going to happen in the future are able to do it because of this technique that I use. And what it does, what you're saying sounds similar. What it does is you're taken by surprise. You're like focusing. Let's say you're focusing on the U.S., the environment of the U.S., let's say, woodlands and the climate, the weather, or you're focusing on whatever your mind wants to focus on. And then you start going, you close your eyes and you're breathing, and I start calling off the months: May 2024, June, July. You do it slowly, and you write down everything that you pick up, that you sense. Well, this is kind of what made my website go viral, is because I was posting this stuff just for fun, just so we could track ourselves and see if this worked. And it works. It works. And the reason it works is because you're not being asked your opinion. Like, what do you think? Who do you think is going to win the election? Or do you think, I don't know, that EV cars will really take off? Or will we go back to the old, those kind of questions? Any question, whether it's a politics or technology, or will we colonize another planet? It doesn't matter what the question is. But when you are asked a question, and lots of people on YouTube, psychics on YouTube, they're like, okay, I'm going to answer this question or that. It's so fraught with error because they're in their heads. You're thinking about what you know about this. You're thinking, like you said, knowledge, or no, what did you say?
You're thinking you're not knowing if you're knowing you're feeling.
I love these epithets. They're great. I want to write them all down. Yes. So your mind is your conscious mind and your unconscious mind is a huge morass, right? It's just loaded with stuff. Much of it is not helpful. It's other people's opinion, it's other people's thought. But when you're doing this system that I got from this man that I used to know, you're caught off guard. Something will pop in your head because you heard Jeanne said, what do you see for May 2024? And this thing pops in your head, writing it down. And the accuracy of you're actually in the energy of May 2024. You're in there and you're like feeling it and writing it down. Versus if I say to you, what do you think is going to happen in May 2024? You're not caught off guard, and you're going to bring to bear all that stuff that you read. And I can tell when somebody is doing it the wrong way. I can tell when, based on people's predictions, whether they're just watching too many YouTube psychics or reading too much news. You can see the difference. And versus when they're caught off guard and they see something. And it sounds a lot like what you're describing as puts you in that state of energy consciousness versus too many YouTubes or too much opinion, too many ideas that are preconceived. And frankly, nobody's ever really been very good at predicting the future when they've done it that way. Like when they just sit there and say, if you say to them, who's going to win an election, or what new inventions will we have? They're thinking too much.
Oh, 1,000,000%, my friend. No, I mean, it's funny because that's the big thing for 2024 is the apocalypse, and a lot of people are disappointed when they come to me or they ask Lao-Tzu, who's my teacher, and I channel him, and his answer is really quite simple. You are like a grain of sand. Asking the beach, what are you doing today?
Talking Dao De Jin here?
I'm talking Lao-Tzu directly. That was his answer for 2024. You're like a grain of sand asking the beach what you're doing today. Fall back into the beach and be realized. The human experience is the limited viewpoint of it's about me. It's never about you. This is pardon me?
It's about totality.
Right, right. But most people are consumed by the need for fear, death, and destruction, which is rinse and repeat over and over again. And, anytime anyone comes to me with that, the first thing I say to them is, that's your red flag. Fear is the first thing you need to stop. So whatever is being the catalyst to manipulate your perception of reality is the emotional content. You are suggestible immediately. And so that's the first time you need to just step back and take a deep breath. And so everyone that's, giving you the prediction that this year is going to be ominous and horrible and the end of the world, I hate to put a pin in it, but that's not what I see. And then people are like, whoa, hang on. We have elections around the world. There's going to be a financial destruction. There's going to be this and that. Okay. Hey, look, listen. There's so much more when you go into the very center of the center of the center and realize what it is, and it's not what you think it is. And it's the dissemination of information, especially from the landscape of media today, has been so limited due to social media that they're not having the control over the mindset of the general person anymore. So now we have a whole different view of reality. Just the way you and I just experienced that charge of energy right now. It's like, hey, it's now. But I would love to hear what you have to say.
Well, it's so interesting. So what I'm hearing, I'm going to hear what makes sense to me that I'm hearing comes through louder. But what I'm hearing is when we started making positive predictions, I deliberately for a couple of years, I would say, okay, everybody, I want you to make positive predictions. Now we go through time, think about the world. What do you see? We started discovering a higher level of accuracy. And now I don't tell them to do that. They're trained, basically, and they enjoy doing it. They don't always it's not always perfectly positive, but the tone of it, there's something about it that's full of light. And I've noticed that every once in a while, somebody will join us who is clearly seeing the world through fear. And they'll make all these predictions. Now, maybe it's my perception, because I haven't exactly done a mathematical statistical analysis of when people are right and when they're not, but I think they tend to have more, less hits. They have a lot of more bombs, basically. Predictions that are just didn't work out that way. So it's, what constitutes positive in and of itself is a question, but filled with light, filled with promise, filled with hope. And not too specific about the hope. It's tricky. The whole thing is tricky. It's tricky if you think about it too much. It's actually not tricky if you just follow the positive. So before we do predictions, we do a meditation, loving kindness meditation, which is I think that's a Buddhist thing, loving kindness. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be held in loving kindness. May I feel joy and wonder at being alive. It's just these intentions. You fill yourself up with this light. May I be filled with deep and natural peace. May my heart and mind awaken. May I feel safe. May I be free. And we keep doing this. I'm guiding. I do this twice a week anyway as a meditation that anybody can join. And then we start adding more people into it, like in our minds. So we'll think about all our neighbors and our friends and our family, and we'll do it. Then we think about our country. We do it. We think about all the countries. We do it. Then we think about all the animals and the trees and then the oceans. And we just build ourselves into this state of total love and kindness. And you fill up with it. I mean, you feel so good. And we've been doing this twice a week for 3 or 4 years. Well, since 2020, started doing it then. And now I'm thinking about adding a third day because people are so anxious right now. And you feel wonderful. But I also do it before we do predictions. So again, we're looking at the world. We have this thing where you rise up above the earth and look down at the beautiful earth. And then we start doing this. It's so funny how we've arrived at something somewhat similar to what you do. And although I want to learn more about what you do. I want to understand the Qigong. And
yeah, I would love to share it with you, my friend. You know, the inner alchemy, I would say, I am a little bit of a fanboy. I'm a little biased, but Taoists have definitely mastered that, sharpened that tool over the thousands of years they've been involved with it. And it's kind of second to none. And so when you get that alchemy process down and you really are quite conscious about where the energy is going, separating electric from magnetic, merging the two together, and you have an effect that is altering a 3D reality. And so you know how it's moving.
Yeah, I know people who've actually beat fatal diseases using Qigong. And the Dao Ching is my go-to book. And I think you were telling me that it is the most best-selling book of all time.
And it's it just so happens, my friend, I just finished transcribing with Latsu firsthand a new 2024 Dai Ching.
So you're going from whatever the original. Do you know Old Chinese? Are you
Yes, it's translated in English. It's translated in Mandarin, more simplified Mandarin, contemporary to today, and it's also translated in Pinyin, so you can sing along to it. And so we get a little, we work on the tones, and then you're able to sing it. You can sing it in English or you can sing it in Mandarin, and it's very, very potent. Because really the Dai Ching is a magical register for the Taoist. So each verse is an incantation. Each verse is an incantation, and it has 81 levels to each verse. And so we use frequencies within each verse also to obtain a higher state of consciousness.
So now I have a question for you. Is this so I went into a bookstore a number of years ago, and they had a whole section devoted to the Dai Ching. And that's when I realized that the Stephen Mitchell version that I was seeing, which I love, is so different from the original. If you could even know the original, and if you don't know Chinese, and it's probably ancient Chinese, what in the world is Stephen Mitchell talking about?
Well, that's translation.
Yeah. Do you know that translation? Do you?
As I said, there's the original text.
Yes.
And then, as I said, I've sat down with Latsu and given you a 2024 version, which is super potent. And so people,
of course,
I channel Latsu. I've been channeling him for 30 years.
Yeah.
And so I just use that direct source information. It's kind of like he's my version of the New Age spiritual Akashic records, or however you want to put it.
But have you published this, or is there?
I just finished. I'm literally just finished it yesterday, so I'll be publishing it momentarily. I'll send you a copy.
I want a copy.
It's very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. And again, the proof is in the pudding, because you're so, sensitive to the energy. You will just set your eyes on it, and just the charge you got up your spine right now, you will realize that how powerful that is, because
I can't wait.
It's in the visceral kinesthetic response. That's how we really validate everything. Gravitate to it, contract, expand.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to read it. And it's just funny, because how did it end up being my go-to book, I have no idea. I
So
mean,
many people mention that one through my journey
right.
in merging with incredible people like yourself and having this conversation. They're like, "Oh yeah, I've had the Dai Ching by my bedside for years. I always go to it." It's like it's just so we call it a living scripture. It's alive, and it has. You could read it a million times. It's going to have a different meaning every single time you read it.
Truth is beauty, beauty is truth.
Yeah.
That's what you need to know. And I used to actually teach from it. Like I'd be sitting there giving somebody a consultation, and I would go, okay, just hold on a minute here. And I'd pull it out and start reading some of my favorite poems. But I am curious to know from someone who has been channeling Lao Tzu and who's written your own, I really can't wait to read your own version, how it compares to Stephen Mitchell. But the main thing is that Stephen Mitchell's version is so different from what I saw in that bookstore. It's the originals. Well, I don't know if you call them originals, but all I know is that it's beautiful.
Yeah, you'll know someone is in the flow of the message.
He must be, right?
Well, yeah, when you receive it that way, when you have a really harsh sort of like there's too much yang, someone's manipulating it, they're talking about death and destruction in the Dai Ching, then they might have had too many coffees that day or maybe a couple of shots of whiskey when they were translating it, because it's not that's not the messaging that is from that scripture.
So I'm going to cut in because I want to tell you that one of the things you're saying to me fits the kinds of visions and symbols and words that I get from spirit. So when I'm doing a reading, meditating on something, I see it's just been going on since the beginning for 35 years. I will see these symbols. Sometimes I'll hear words, sometimes I'll see pictures. It's extremely light and a little funny. It's never ugly and it's never scary. It's never like fear-mongering. And that to me is the message of spirit.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That's the message of spirit. It's beautiful. It's light. It's not what I was raised with. And I wonder, like, where is that coming from? Who is that? Why is it so light and airy? It's definitely not Western civilization type talk. They see, if there's a they see things as fun. Everything's kind of fun, right? What's going to happen at the election? What's going on in the world? What's happening with the environment? Blah, blah, blah. What's going on with this person? What's going on in my future? Everything is just sort of like, it's cheerful and light. It's fun. It's a little whimsical. And it's dead on accurate too. Does that fit? Because that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, any interaction with Lao Tzu, he sort of creates a big macro view of things, and he always speaks of the universe and how that will reflect on your very experience in a myopic level of a human being's journey. And then he'll give you the highs and lows of these days, because it's all got to do with the energy and vibration of the sun, the earth and the moon and all the planets that are moving on. And so you can get to a point where he'll give you a metal element, an element that is most serving for you for this particular week, and that will evoke an emotional state of love and acceptance. And this is the type of way that he speaks and shares his message with people. And so, you know, when he gets down to the nuts and bolts of the human experience, he gets a little cheeky. There's definitely a cheeky, just as you were saying with your own spirit. There's this sort of like, oh, you're so funny. Let's get to the bigger picture. Let's embody this. Let yourself breathe as this present moment and realize everything is perfection. And so that perfection is expressed through that love. And that love becomes universal, and it becomes limitless, infinite, abundant. And that is perceiving things as you resonate and continue to in this state. And so all of a sudden you go to bed in love, you wake up in love, you are in love with all things, you are love, you are an expression of that, and it embodies the very moment you become nameless. As we always refer to the Tao, you know, the name that can be named is not the name. The way that can be walked is not the way. And so everyone sort of makes it so complex, but the simplicity is this present moment.
Yeah. And it's, well, the whole thing about the present moment is very healing.
Mm.
And they say that people who meditate regularly achieve higher levels. If people are in pain, for example, like physical pain, they achieve higher levels of painlessness than morphine can give them.
Mm.
It's more effective than the strongest painkillers because it's natural, and it's just being in the body and being awake in the present moment versus thinking about this versus fear. So I'm a believer, and it follows the intuition process too. The body guides you, protects you, talks to you. I'm always in a great mystery about who is talking to me when I'm seeing these symbols, hearing these words, sometimes feeling beings floating over, smiling down. I often wonder, like, what is that? And I certainly don't have any dogmatic answer, like any absolute concrete answer. It's more mystery, but it's beautiful. It's a mystery I'll take any day.
And it's whatever you want it to be. You can go deeper, or you can leave it as it is. It's up to you.
Right.
It's not for anyone else to shape or craft it. Because I come across a lot of people through this incredible journey of having this podcast, and you know, people are highly attuned and very sensitive to a lot of things. I see it in their aura, and then I ask them, you know, you're talking about you see visions, and have you ever thought of potentially offering the maybe the contemplation of channeling or doing? They're like, no, not interested. Okay. But that's the whole point of it. It's like you're right in the right place where you need to be right now, and it's all seamlessly being received. And the more open your heart, the more you receive that. And if it's something that you want to explore, you can explore it at the pace that you choose to.
So the latest thing that when you talk about channeling, I was teaching this class on psychometry called heirlooms. You bring an heirloom, an object, an old object, and we go around the room and you hold and meditate on the object. You write down what you see. And in preparation for this class, I found a couple of objects. I found a bottle that was in my backyard. I live in an antique house with an old barn, and gardening, stuff comes up, right? Objects come up. I found this old bottle, and then about a week later, I found an old horseshoe, really old. It's probably 1830, maybe even earlier than that. And it was in the woods. And so I'm holding the bottle. I'm sitting by myself holding the bottle. And I have never seen such vivid visions of other people and other beings than when I'm doing psychometry. I don't know if you want to call it channeling. I don't know what it is, but it is, I can see people like from World War I, World War II. I see moments, it's like videos. They're videos, and they are real. You know they're real. They're not like a movie set. They might have the same costumes, like similar costumes, but it is as if you are there and you're peering into them. And it's a miracle. It's a living world. everything has energy. Everything has these people who can't possibly be alive anymore they're still around in these objects. And so I did the horseshoe just a few days ago. And so this has been in the dirt I was out hiking across town in the woods. And I guess it used to be a trail, like a trail that people would go on with horses. And I found this old horseshoe. I've got it in the other room. I'd show it to you. It's just so cool. But anyway, it's very, very old. And I could see, so I thought, I'm going to get the energy of the animal. And I saw this pump going, like those old pumps, ba-boom, ba-boom, boom, ba-boom, just like water going into a trough. This is the highlight of this animal's life, getting fed water, being given water. And it was an old-fashioned trough. I saw the inside of a barn that was clearly very old. I have a barn. My garage is an old barn, so I know what they look like on the inside. Anyway, I'm just saying, it was so real. I held the bottle, and I saw this man dressed in a kind of Teddy Roosevelt outfit. It's the only thing I could, he had on this beige outfit with Bermuda shorts, and he was fishing. And I looked into his eyes. He had the bluest eyes, and he looked worried. He looked unhappy. I'm like, what is this? This is life. This is energy. This is consciousness. And it was better than any channeling. I mean, I've channeled. I've had grandmothers and people passed over and high beings coming over and talking to me and telling me these things and that thing. I've had all that. But this was a whole other world. And I recommend it to anybody who wants to really see what is out there in the way of life forms. The horse, people. Does this sound crazy to you, or does it sound?
No, not at all. I do it all the time. you grab this phone, right? I grab this phone, and you want to go deep into the whereabouts of how this was made by the death of some poor, very, very fragile individual coming from a country that would be questioned. And his cup of rice and death for this actual phone goes so deep. And right back to his family.
We're talking the same thing. Right.
Right. And you go right into it.
Our homes, everything, all the objects here, not just the horseshoe in the woods.
Everything
that we have is coming from somewhere and has people's consciousness attached to it. And if you go there, you hold the object, you're transported. They are in your home. They are in your world. And you have to love that. You have to feel that love, that connection. It's
profound.
It is profound. It is so exciting. I was after I saw the man in the bottle, I was just like, woo! You could give me a trip around the world and nothing could match the experience of holding that bottle and tuning in and getting what I got. Nothing. That's travel.
Right.
Beautiful. Yeah. So you're right there if you're picking up your phone.
Well, it's kind of like some of the things I like to teach people initially is just you start with the object and you hold it, and then whatever comes into your mind, you write it down. This is now.
You did that stuff.
Pardon me?
I didn't know you did that stuff.
Yeah, it's really important as a foundational stuff for clairvoyant like training and getting deeper into it. And then, you sort of get to a level where I like to teach people how to do what you call black ops psychic readings. And you're like, what is that? Well, it's sort of like walking. You can walk up to anyone and in 30 seconds give them their mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual state. And people are like, how do you do that? Well, it's about reading the energy flow. And so everything has within it, the energy centers have an emotion and a virtue, and there's excess and deficiency. And it's not about, it's right where you said it's so important. It's that present moment. And people are like, how do you do that? Because I'm not invested in it. This is not my information. I'm just now. And it's as if I'm just reading a menu. And of course, you can tell me to stop when you want me to stop, but it's just sitting there in your field. And so this information comes up. And in lots of cases, I always ask people, you sure you want me to? Yeah, go ahead. And so I start at the bottom first. And so by the time I get to the sexual energy, they're like, whoa, you can stop right now. You're good. We're good. Wow. I don't even believe this is real. Yes, it's very real. And so people get very like, okay, there's no way you could know this. How do you even know this? Well, I don't know anything. I don't claim to know anything. It's just this present moment. And when you tap into that, just like we've been talking about, and our gratitude and love affair, Jeanne and I, for this present moment and ability to tap in, it's like Christmas Day for me. Just as I said at the beginning of this podcast, every day is as if the first time I ever experienced any of this stuff. And I believe truly this is part of the connection that I have with all this internal sort of like greater understanding of things, is being grateful, being completely immersed in it. And I never ever take for granted the experience that I'm having. I'm just there. And I'm like a little kid who's seen Santa Claus for the first time. It's just beautiful.
I remember when I was on this silent retreat at IMS, and Sharon Salzberg was the teacher. Sharon's a very down-to-earth New Yorker. She's written about 6 best-selling books on Buddhism, about love and everything. She's a really, really fabulous person. And when you're on the retreat, you get moments with the teacher. So I had my 15-minute moment with her at the beginning, and this was about 8 years ago. And I told her that I was just so anxious. I sat down, I'd been working, for weeks, and then I came to the retreat, and I was having anxiety attacks, sitting there, like I couldn't catch my breath. And I don't normally get them. I'm a sensitive person, but, and I said, I just don't know what to do with this. And she looked at me and she said, and I know you'll appreciate this, she said, Jeanne, it's just energy. It's just energy. I never forgot that. It's the energy. I thought of it. I had a vision when she said that about anxiety. It's just the horse in the starting gate, nowhere to go. You're sitting and you're used to having the gate open and you busy doing stuff. It's just energy.
Yeah. I mean, it really is the be all or end all of all things.
We don't have to pathologize it. We don't have to think that because we're anxious, that means that there's something to be anxious about. That's the other thing I think about, is the difference between anxiety or worry and fear. Gavin de Becker, you may have heard of him. He wrote a book called The Gift of Fear. And I was in the library one day many years ago, and the book, I was just wandering around in the library, and the book fell out of the stacks and landed right on the ground in front of me. And I said, okay, I should sit down and look at this. Sat down, started reading it, and just read the whole book. And I'm not a big reader, but I couldn't put it down. And what he talks about, he's a security expert. What he talks about is the difference between when fear is a gift and all the rest of the time it's just noise. It's just distracted noise. And that distracted noise is very painful. But when you really have something that is, you have to get moving on, something that is what fear is really for, is to guide you when there's danger, right? Then it's very different. It's directed. It's not hurtful. In fact, it's kind of an enlightened state where you come alive and you act. And it saved me from after reading that book, it saved me from a lot of painful worry. Like if I was teaching a class late at night in downtown Boston, and I always parked in the underground parking garage underneath the Boston Common. And that's about 3 or 4 levels, and you have to go down, 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 because I would get there during rush hour, but I would leave around 11 p.m. The place was empty. Now that's the scene of a lot of bad movies, right? Underground garage. And after reading that book, I realized what De Becker is saying is, if there is real danger, you'll know. Every hair will stand on end. You will get that signal, and that will direct you. So I relaxed after that. I go to my car. I was like, so what? Most people are loving and kind and friendly. And that was really useful as far as suffering, anxiety, suffering, worry. Such a waste, huge waste.
It taps your life force without question.
For nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just, people have framed out in today's society this sort of like what we would call, back in the day, a psychic vampire or a Karen, they call it these days. And it's like you are submitting yourself to this personality who needs help. And instead of looking at it as a moment to heal this person, you are receiving it as they're taking from me, and they're able to take from me. You're giving them the power to take from you.
Right.
And so it's like, that's where it comes down. Are you handing the power away from the true source of who you are? And then, of course, being around someone like that will be extremely exhausting. But generally speaking, your intention when you ask someone, how are you doing today, is your general interest in how they're doing. And when you tap into, well, it's interesting you asked me that because I just had quite an interesting week. And before you know it, and it goes down the rabbit hole, with good intention comes a very interesting, problematic situation that only ends up that way if you see the glass half empty.
Right.
Right.
You
are me, I am you.
Right.
And so when we truly embody that, what are you afraid of? Yourself?
Right. Yeah. That whole story, glass half empty, glass half full. But when we were children, we had a fire in our house. It was a very dangerous fire. And everybody acted with direction. Nobody was going bonkers. I remember I was 8, and we saw the fire. We heard my brother was yelling upstairs because it was on the 2nd floor. My brother had a bedroom on the attic, and he smelled the smoke, and he opened his door, and the hallway was filled with smoke. He started yelling, and I was downstairs with my mother writing cards. It was holiday cards. And I ran up the stairs, and the whole thing was filled with smoke, and it was all red on the window. And I just turned, went downstairs, got my little brother, and walked him outside. And the older siblings came down. We all went outdoors. It was winter. My mother called the fire department. Everything was done with great deliberation. I mean, everything happened exactly as it should. And I remember I was scared afterwards when it was all over. You have an aftershock, something like that. But when real danger was at hand, we were directed, and it wasn't bad, right? It wasn't horrible. It was taken care of. Everyone played their roles. Even an 8-year-old child knew what to do. And And then my father came home in the middle of it all. He'd been away for 2 weeks on a business trip, and he walked in the door and he saw us all, handling this. And he went upstairs and shut the door to the room that was on fire. And immediately the fire went out before the fire department got there. I just realized when I think about the situations that have been dangerous, everything got handled. It's always the thinking that ruined it, thinking about it, which was always imbued with everything you've read or what you've been told or all the movies you watch, that where everything is trying to stimulate your fear. But real fear is a gift, and everything else is noise and energy.
Yeah, I would agree with you 1,000,000%. That's, I mean, the essence of all things. And, the more you have a knowing, that fear is either a real indicator of something that is the present moment, that is there to avoid the saber-toothed tiger, or are you really just being controlled by your social media telling you don't have enough likes? And I mean, that really is what most people are contending with there.
I don't pay any attention to that.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I don't. If I can have a community of people who are engaged and interested, and we can all talk and hang out, I'm really enjoying that. And if that ever goes away, which, I mean, nothing lasts forever, everything transforms, then I'm going to look for what new fun thing, right? What new adventure? I always see it that way. It's if you go through this lull where people are not posting or people are not calling, I'm thinking, what can I do now? Right? What fun thing can I do now? I always take these things as a sign that there's some new horizon, some new way to expand myself in a way, like open my heart more, open myself. How about you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more you allow, and within Taoism, accepting and allowing is sort of the ultimate of all things. You just realize the present moment. The gift is your offering. The present.
I'm going to go back and read that book. I have a whole section on being in charge of a country.
Mm-hmm.
A good leader listens to the people. The good leader is flexible and bendable. The wise are flexible and bendable. Yeah, I love that. I have to go back and read it. I can't wait to read your version.
Yes, I'm going to have to send it to you.
I can buy it on Amazon and sale, and then I can review it.
Oh yeah, I think I'll do that. I was never really a fan of their
No, nobody is.
yeah, they're not really that rewarding for inspired authors that want to share their incredible experience.
Well, I'll put it on your website, but I just need to know when it comes out.
Yes, I will. I'll definitely. Oh my goodness, excuse me. Wow, that was.
We've been on the phone for a while here. I also have a book that I'm in draft form on the tarot and intuition, but it's not published yet. So it's the best book for beginners, as well as more seasoned people. I like to appeal to those people.
Well, I mean, it's the tarot is a great divination tool, in my opinion, and it's like people can't believe how accurate and how powerful something like that is. And it's like, it's just cards, you're shuffling it up. What do you expect? No.
Well, it has a structure, and that's what makes it the tarot. And it isn't just pictures, but I've played with those cards for so long that when I throw down a spread, I'm not seeing static pictures. They're videos. They're moving. And the characters are like looking at you a certain way. They have a certain attitude, and it changes depending on the topic. So I automatically am throwing energy onto those pictures. And if I wish that I could upload what I see when I throw cards, because everything's moving.
It's alive.
It's alive because energy's alive, because consciousness is alive. And like I was teaching a class last night and somebody was saying, well, that card means this. And I'm like, actually, it's really difficult to say what that card means. It depends on what you're trying to read. And then, yes, they have archetypal meanings, but if you get a book that tells you what that card means, all you're really getting is somebody who played with those cards for, say, 6 years, maybe. I've played with them for 30, but say 6 years, and you're really getting their perception, not getting the real meaning. But if you need to start that way, okay. But like I think of a good example would be like the death card. It just means letting go. The death of something. Almost never does it mean physical death, because how many physical deaths are you dealing with on a daily basis, really, of a person dying? But people are so afraid of that card. They're so afraid of that card that for years I used to have classes in my house, and people would somehow leave their cards behind. And I had about 7 death cards that I found under the couch. People, they didn't want those cards. They threw them out. But it's about letting go. And letting go is a really important part of new birth and new life. So I just say, if you want to know what the death card means, it's usually about letting go. And then the rest of the meaning that you get will come when you are asking a question. And then you'll get much more nuanced meaning, because you're talking about something that's got an energy. It's not static.
Yeah. I mean, it's aligns with a lot of, that divination tool. I teach people sort of like human or body dowsing. So you spot the vortices in any sort of environment and find a power center and the ley lines, and sort of construct something where you're getting the highest resonance possible within the environment, and then sort of lay it out using feng shui to optimize the energetic, basically geometry. You start like really moving things around, and I mean, it's really powerful stuff.
I'm looking as the dragon behind you, and while you're talking about cards, because I'm thinking about reading cards, and I'm reading the dragon, and I'm realizing that the dragon's changed, and it fits. It's you. And dragons try to look fierce, but the dragon looks more like a fun dragon. And you have kids. You have quite a few kids, right? 6 kids, and they're full of that fun life, right? That fun view. And the dragon looks like it would be friendly to children. It has that, like, the kind of, I just think you're probably a very fun person with the children, and your view is similar to those images that I would get in my visions, that there's a little bit of frolic, a little bit of fun in it, rather than heavy. Not heavy at all.
You're dead on accurate. I mean, my children are my very expression of all things. They're truly just an acknowledgement of the deep love that I have for my wife, and that's just sort of like, that's endless, abundant, timeless, limitless. And my children are just another facet of that awareness, and with that, they bring their incredible guru-like state where we really find this true unconditional love, where you would literally in a split second surrender yourself physically for anything for that child. And that, I think, is a real fundamental sort of like development that comes with that bond as a parent. I think it's fantastic. I think it's amazing. Strangely enough, there are some people that don't have the same experience, but generally speaking, most people do. But they, I can't fathom it that you wouldn't come to that conclusion as a parent. But their journey is a different path.
Well, and it can have to do with so many factors. That they, their own childhood and how they were raised as well. But I am seeing your own. I always tell people the cards don't lie, but it isn't just the cards, the tarot. It's all imagery. If you look at a picture like that dragon in the background, he looks like he's got the same gleam in his eye that the Disney characters, the tigers, and they have. It's very fun, and he's dynamic and exciting to look at, and he's mischievous. He's going to be having fun, and I get that, and I figure I must be looking into your own psyche.
You're looking very. I like to attribute everything to be childlike in your nature and have everything receive everything at face value. It's like that. Those childlike moments are when everything is realized, instead of having to compartmentalize things and be in the processes of, I'm now this person that has a life, a job, a burden, a commitment. Just be the present moment.
The Fool in the tarot is a child. And he's also totality. He's number 0, which you use the word totality a lot. And the Fool represents totality. From what we spring from this innocence, this wide-eyed view of life. And he's wise, the wise fool.
Then I am a fool.
Oh, that's awesome. Your kids are lucky. And your wife.
Well, thank you. This has been incredible today, my friend.
It's fun, yeah.
It's really been really powerful definitely for myself, but especially for all the people that are going to watch this. The power of this information and the incredible conversation that we've had today is going to really give people insight, and they're going to come looking for more answers, and I want them to come to you. And so, even though you're not a social media person, I'm going to make sure all the groups that you have and your website will be under this podcast.
Good.
I'm going to ask you one last question before
My dog wants to come into the room. Come here, baby. All right. Okay.
And my last question is always this. What is your definition of consciousness?
The word totality comes up. Consciousness is an infinitely mysterious and thing that pervades the entire universe. And it's in everything. And I'm still, it's not understood by humans, consciousness. You could say a dictionary definition is what we feel, what we're aware of, thought, feeling, what we're aware of. But there's consciousness in that object, that horseshoe. There's consciousness in trees. There's consciousness in the ocean, I believe. So I'm still wondering. I know science is looking at it now. Well, they've been looking at it for years, and they keep talking about something called panpsychism, which means consciousness is in everything, or mind is in everything. And nobody's got an answer. but it's what I care about. It's what I want to understand. And I don't think I've answered your question. I'm probably telling you that there are more questions than there are answers to what is consciousness. But it's everywhere. It's everything.
Oh, that's for another conversation. We need to have a part 2 at some
We
point.
gotta have that conversation. It is one of my most fervent obsessions right now, is trying to understand it.
Yeah.
What is it to you?
Well, it's being aware you have choices.
Okay, I'll take that. Conscious choices.
Yeah, because most people believe that they are of this body. And Jade Emperor, one of my teachers, always reminds me, when you believe you're not of this body, what can harm you?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. And so the limitations of the humanists are the only limitation. It starts in here.
So when I think of consciousness as everything, I believe that when we meditate twice a week and on loving kindness for the whole world, and we send healing to the whole world, I believe it's really happened. So our consciousness, our conscious intention is that we are sending peace to the world. We're sending healing to people. I believe that we are able to reach those who are alone and afraid, and that they can feel somebody cares about them, that somebody's putting healing and protection around them. And in that sense, consciousness goes everywhere. And in that sense, we have a choice. We're not stuck with what just comes at us. We have an ability to become very expanded and powerful if we want to use it for good. And I don't see any point in using it for anything but good. But that wouldn't be fun. It's like a genie in a bottle, consciousness. You can invoke guidance, help, healing, a lot of good things.
So I'm going to hold you to part 2 of our conversation here.
All right.
And I look forward to it.
Me too.
I really want to thank you for sharing your time with me today. This has been
Very
a
welcome.
profound conversation, and I'm looking forward to part 2, and I will pursue that within your timeline and your calendar.
Sounds good.
To happen in the near future. And I want to thank you. I want to thank the universe. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us. And in closing, I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master Sun Ching, and I will see you on the next one, guys.
Take care. Thank you.